All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Olivia Radcliffe, and I am here with the infamous Dr. Gustavo Barca. Gustavo, I want you to give us a little bit of overview. What do you do at eBeam Services?
Hello, everybody. I am Dr. G. I am the new applications manager here at eBeam Services. And I feel like we have a very interesting topic to talk about today.
Yeah, so today we are going to talk about decontamination, or also known as bioreduction. So if you see those two terms, both in eBeam's marketing, there's bioreduction, decontamination, same thing, right?
Yes. When we do decontamination, we're basically doing a bioreduction, which is a reduction of the microbial load of the materials, right?
Okay. Well, that was the first question. What is decontamination? You just
Yes.
answered it. There you go. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I just want to say that several products like pet food, pet bedding, spices, there's a variety of markets that require bioreduction, decontamination processes, right? And they don't need to achieve sterility levels. They don't do the validation steps to demonstrate sterility, but they do require a microbial reduction, a bioreduction, a decontamination process. And that's exactly what we're talking about today.
So they don't require the validation steps as in per the ISO 11137 standard?
They're not marketed as sterile, right?
Okay.
So they don't have to do all the validations required to be marketed as sterile, but they do require some microbial reduction, right? And there's even decorative materials, flowers, and all kinds of decorative materials where they do the decontamination to extend the shelf life, right? So that's another interesting new application that we've been working on.
Nice. So what sort of validation process does a bioreduction or decontamination product need to go through?
So I think the important thing to have in mind is when we talk about sterilization, we talk about a killing phase where we kill all the bugs, the microbes, the microorganisms, right? And then we have a sterility assurance level, the SAL, which is 10 to minus 6, right? It's the overkill phase. When we're talking about decontamination, we're not necessarily focusing on the overkill. We're only talking about the killing phase. That's what they care about. So usually the customer will have a bioburden, a known bioburden. They would have determined that, and we adjust the dose to promote the kill. Sometimes that dose is sufficient to induce sterility, depending on the D10 of the microorganism, right? The sensitivity of the microorganism that they're trying to kill, but they don't necessarily go through all the validation steps to demonstrate that.
So how do you determine that dose? How do you know that you've accomplished what you need to accomplish with it?
So we look at the microorganism. We have documented evidence of the microbial levels, right? And then based on that, we can adjust the dose to make sure that that kill is guaranteed. Radiation is one of the only, if not the only, sterilization modality where you can actually understand how much you're killing as a function of dose. Right? Typically, when we say 25 kilogray, what we're actually saying is 2.5 kilogray per log reduction. That's what that kind of means, right? So you have an initial bioburden. To get to the full sterility assurance level, you need to do 25 as a standard. Let's word it that way. So we do a little calculation and we come up with a dose, right? Typically, decontamination processes have different minimum max ranges than sterilization ranges, right? They're different. They allow a larger window as well.
Why is that?
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. When you're trying to achieve a 10 to minus 6 sterility level, you need a lot more dose, right? So you have to you adjust your minimum dose towards the dose that you need, right? Based on your verification dose. And then you have your max. When you're doing a decontamination, you don't have that verification dose, right? So the window is a little bit different. So usually we would look at decontamination, we would see values going anywhere from 5 kilogray to 40 kilogray, where you wouldn't be talking in 99.9% of the cases, you wouldn't be considering sterilization a product that you're beaming at 5. Right? This would be a very special case, as the ISO 11137 would say.
So it's really that minimum dose that gets adjusted more so than the maximum dose. The
Right,
maximum
but
dose has more to do with the actual materials being processed versus the
exactly.
bioburn level.
The so-called DUR, right? The dose uniformity ratio. Yes. But you have more flexibility in terms of the minimum dose. You were right there.
Okay. So that maximum dose, is that the same process then going through a material exposure like you would with any other product processing with e-beam to try to determine what that maximum dose is?
Yes, we would still do a dose mapping, right? We would still go through a dose mapping process to be able to determine the DUR and access the maximum dose based on that. And we would still do a max dose testing because regardless of what the ISO is recommending, we need to be able to determine that the product still performs after the process, right? You can't sell bad product, right? Still got to be able to perform. So we still do that. What we don't usually do, or our customers really don't choose to do, is the verification dose or dose audit step routinely or frequently.
Right. But that doesn't necessarily mean the product is any less safe or bad product or anything like that. It's not.
No, we got to remember, Olivia, that when we talk about products, they're all different, right? There are products for oral intake, there are products for injection, right, for parenteral administration. There are products for intravenous administration. There are multiple types of product, and each one of them will have to abide by its own, its own regulations or own requirement. So it really comes down to what it's used for, right?
Well, let's talk about some of those uses. What are some uses you have seen in your experience for decontamination products?
So for sure, it's interesting you mentioned that because even recently the FDA put a note there regarding a possible recall in pet food, right? In pet food. So pet, because of contamination, right? They're contaminated with a specific bacteria. So we talk about food. Sometimes we have E. coli outbreaks in ground beef, for instance, right? Not to mention cross-contamination when you're talking about plant-based materials, right? You can have cross-contamination from the crop fields, right? So in that case, you don't need sterility. You don't need to eat sterile food unless you're immune depressed or you have immune challenges, right? You don't need that level. All you need is to make sure it's safe to eat. So food is an example. Pet food is an example, right? Veterinary products, depending on what they are for contact with the skin, not for direct contact with blood, right? They also can be, decontamination is the method of choice. And like I said, when we were talking a little bit earlier today in this talk, when I mentioned decorative pieces, flowers and petals and other materials, they tend to use electron beam decontamination as a way to extend the shelf life.
Like actual flowers, live flowers?
Yes. Well, they're not live, but dried flowers.
Dried flowers. Okay.
Dried flowers, right? Dried petals, and even cannabis. There's a variety of cannabis right now is being explored. We can actually, I think this could be a nice topic for a Q&A one day. I don't want to get too much into it, but there's a lot of decontamination happening with cannabis using radiation technology, not at our sites, but worldwide, right? That's another example.
That is an interesting topic to get into because there have been some regulatory changes in Ohio that might.
Right.
And we'll put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. Put a pin in that one next time. Okay. So how would you recommend someone figuring out what if someone has a product and they don't know specifically, is this sterilization? Is it decontamination? How do they figure out what they need for that product?
So it all starts with the application of the product. What is the final destination? What is its final use? Starts there, right? Then we look at what regulations are required, and then we begin the initial step of doing a microbial count, right, on the product, and then dose mapping, material exposure, right, max dose testing to be more precise, and then routine production.
Okay.
Right. I would love to go through into details, but then we're going to have to go through a list of applications, a list of requirements, and I think that's too much for today.
Well, we can leave it on if you have a question. I want to go more in depth on this with Gustavo. You can book a call with him for free just go to ebeamservices.com and you can fill out a contact form or schedule a call and get all your questions answered. And if you have any additional questions you want Gustavo to answer on a Q&A with tech services, I will put the link below this video. So just go ahead and submit a question. Any last words you want to give out there, Gustavo?
No, I guess that's
No.
what I had to say.
No, that's it.
If they're looking for help and assistance in how to best use eBeam technology, I'm always available for a call and a conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Gustavo, and thank you all for joining us. We'll be back.
Bye.